Today, we're going to dive into something pretty profound. We're going to unpack just a single verse from an ancient text, the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. But trust me, this isn't just any verse. It's more like an invitation, and it uses this incredible metaphor to describe knowledge itself as a perfectly ripened fruit. Just listen to this. Oh, expert and thoughtful men relish the mature fruit of the desire tree. I mean, isn't that a beautiful way to put it? It's not framing knowledge as some dry academic thing you have to force yourself to study. Instead, it's this delicious, juicy fruit, just waiting for all of us to enjoy.
Okay, so a fruit that contains all wisdom. What does that even mean, right? How can a book be a fruit, and what in the world is this desire tree that it supposedly grew on? Well, let's break it all down.
To really understand the fruit, you gotta start with the tree. And the source of this whole metaphor, well, it's just as fascinating as the fruit itself.
So the source text compares the entire collection of Vedic literature to something called a kalpa-taroḥ, which is basically a wish-fulfilling tree. Now imagine a tree that could grant any wish, but in this case the wish isn't for, stuff, it's for knowledge. The idea is that anything a person could possibly want to know can be found somewhere on this tree.
And we're not just talking about some abstract philosophy here. I mean, look at the sheer scope of this thing. It's said to cover everything from social and political life to economics and military strategy, all the way to medicine, chemistry, metaphysics, and of course, a very clear roadmap for spiritual realization. It's designed to be a complete guide for life, for keeping your body and soul together, and then going way beyond that.
And here's the absolute key takeaway. If that entire body of knowledge, the Vedas, is this massive, all-encompassing tree, then the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is presented as its ultimate product. It's not just another leaf or a branch, it's the final, fully ripened fruit that contains the concentrated essence of everything else on that tree.
So we've got this tree of all knowledge and its perfect fruit. But remember, the verse invites us to relish it, to taste its nectarine juice, which begs the question, what does spiritual knowledge actually taste like?
Well, the source text has a very specific word for this concept. Rasa. Rasa literally means taste or mellow. You can think of it as the spiritual or emotional flavor we get from any kind of relationship or interaction. It's the reason we do anything, really. We're all searching for some kind of enjoyable rasa. And these ancient texts, they don't just talk about taste in some vague, poetic way. No, they get incredibly specific. They actually outline a whole spectrum of these different emotional flavors. In fact, the source identifies 12 primary varieties of these rasas.
And as you can see, these rasas really do cover the entire spectrum of human experience. You've got the taste of anger, the taste of wonder, of romantic love, comedy, chivalry, even the really specific tastes we find in relationships, like being a servant, or a close friend, or a parent. Every single interaction we have has its own distinct flavor.
Okay, now here's the core idea, and it's a big one. The source explains that all the rasas we experience here in this world, they're kind of like temporary, distorted reflections of a real, original spiritual reality. The love and friendship we feel here is real, for sure, but it's always fleeting. The text is making the claim that the original, permanent, and completely satisfying forms of these very same tastes are meant to be exchanged with the Supreme Spirit. But there's another really fascinating layer to this whole thing. That original verse adds a little twist. It says the fruit becomes even more tasteful depending on how it's delivered. So check this out. The original speaker of this text was a sage named Śukadeva Gosvāmī. And here's where this amazing wordplay comes in. In Sanskrit, the word for parrot is śuka. Now, there's this old belief that when a parrot cuts into a ripe fruit with its beak, it somehow enhances the sweetness. So the verse is making this clever comparison, suggesting that the sage, Śuka, presented this fruit of knowledge in a way that makes it even more appealing, even more relishable for everyone who hears it. What this really implies is that how you receive this knowledge is every bit as important as the knowledge itself. It's not just about what's being said, but who's saying it and how it gets passed down to you.
Yeah, see, the source text really emphasizes that this fruit wasn't just, randomly dropped from the tree. It was passed down with incredible care. The knowledge is described as first coming from the spiritual world, then it's given to a compiler, who then passes it to a perfected speaker. And finally, that speaker delivers it to a truly sincere listener at a very critical moment in his life. This whole idea of an unbroken chain is meant to preserve the fruit's original potency and flavor.
And because this knowledge is considered so precious, the source gives a pretty strong word of caution. It really stresses how important it is to hear this from a genuine representative in that chain. It warns people to avoid professional reciters who might just treat the text like a business, because they could misinterpret it or jump ahead to really confidential parts without building the proper foundation. The idea is that a serious student should respect the process and go through it gradually to really get it.
So, let's just quickly recap our little journey here. We started with this cosmic tree that contains all knowledge, and we found its most ripened fruit. We dove into the spiritual tastes, the rasas that are waiting inside it, and then we learned that it was delivered by a perfect speaker who somehow made it even sweeter. And it was all passed down through this careful chain, inviting us to relish it the right way.
Which, leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. The source text suggests that all the tastes we love and cherish in this life, love, friendship, wonder, they're all just temporary reflections of an eternal original. So the question it really leaves us with is this: what would it be like to taste the real thing?